phrases. My mom used to use phrases. I didn't know what she was talking about half the time. I want you to clean up this room, every nook and cranny. Every nook. What is the cranny? Give me some more. What's a nook? I don't know what that is either, you crazy lady. Is my nook dirtier than my cranny? Well, your nook is fine, but your cranny's filthy. Clean it up now. Clean it up. Pronto. Pronto. My mom is awesome, though. See, all she cared about, it's still this day, all she cares about if I have eaten. That's all she cares about. Have you eaten? Have you eaten, son? You look terrible. You look like a freak. You look terrible. Do you need something to eat? Like, Mom, I weigh 210. No, you look like a little freak circus boy. Is what you look like. Have you eaten? I remember one night, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was in high school. I came home too late. You know, it's dark. You ever do that? You're sneaking in the house. It's just pitch black. So I go in the kitchen, you know, and I turn on the... No, garbage disposal. Why did they put that stupid garbage disposal thing right by the light? I was expecting a nice warm light. I get... Oh, she was on me like a panther. Where were you? I was worried sick. You could have gotten hurt. Have you eaten? Have you eaten? Kids of my own. And it's like you try to give them good advice, you know. I'm trying. I'm doing the best I can. Sometimes parents, we just fail at advice. I remember my mom when I was a kid. She used to give me good advice too late. Think about it. Good advice too late. Like when I was a kid, I hit my head on the corner of the table. Careful! Boy, I'm sure glad you were there, Hoss. Who knows what would have happened, Nostradamus? Moms are a big help when you lose something, aren't they? You ever lose something? Your mom is just not a help at all. Hey, Mom, I can't find my wallet. Well, it's gotta be somewhere. It's like, that's good. I thought I was going crazy for a minute. I thought I was looking for something that didn't exist. Thank you. And then they go, where'd you leave it last? You're good. Thanks, Captain Obvious. I was on a totally different track. I was looking where I left it first.
We love you, moms. You guys are going to get a little sermon illustration handed out. Everybody gets a quarter tonight. Okay? Everyone gets a quarter. So please pass those out. Moms are great. And the thing I love about moms is that they always mean well. Moms have always the good intentions, don't they? They always mean well. Dads, on the other hand, you never quite can figure a dad out, can you? Like, sometimes he's really embarrassing. Other times, you don't really know his intention. He's kind of like a cat. I'm not a cat guy, and the reason why I'm like not a cat guy is because you never can quite figure out the cat. Because whenever I look at a cat, it always got that look like I could kill you at any time, you know? Like I could just take you guys all out. You never can trust a cat, and that's kind of like dads. You know, sometimes they're going to be really nice to you, sometimes they're going to embarrass you. But moms, on the other hand, they always mean well. You know, and not that I'm going to compare my mom to a dog, but you know, they're like dogs. Like dogs always mean well. They can do something, and then they're just like, and you're like, what did you do that for? But then they're like, hey, do you want to go throw a ball? You know, they're all just happy again. You always know they're predictable, and I love that about moms. I miss my mom. She's been gone for a number of years, and maybe some of you guys too are missing your moms today. Sometimes it's hard on Mother's Day to remind us of the times we used to have with our mothers. They're precious, and but my mom always had good intentions. That's what I loved about her. She always had good intentions, especially like when it came to the laundry. She had good intentions, but my mom was horrible with the laundry. I just wish that she would let my sisters take over. And because I don't think, you know, she's worried about them wasting soap. So she always did the laundry. But then she made all my clothes into Barbie clothes, right? I'm like, thanks, Mom, for the sweater here. And then one time, it's my senior year playing basketball. I'm the captain of the varsity basketball squad. Big deal, AA school. And big deal, because we raised money in the Booster Club for new uniforms. None of the old stuff, was when the shorts were up here and then they went down a little bit further, right? We were like, we look ridiculous. Our senior year, we're going to get shorts that go down here, right? And so we had the Booster Club was like raising money for these new uniforms, new white uniforms, purple uniforms, were purple and gold. And then they raised so much money that they threw in these new warm-up jerseys. Like they were dark purple. They were so sweet with tearaway pants, so you look cool and you just go, and it's like, hopefully you put your shorts on before you did that. And so we were just like so proud of these things. And it was like, we got them. And, oh man, I love my mom. May she rest in peace. But she did something to my uniform that they still talk about, right? So here I am. And I get my clothes and I'm getting my uniform and I hold up the whites. It's pink. And she washed the purples and the whites together. Brand new. And they like completely bled. And so I had a pink uniform. I freaked out. I'm like, what am I going to do? She felt so horrible. And we tried everything from oxy stuff to, we tried everything to try to get this out. She got most of it out and there was still like little pink strips down the side on my uniform the whole year, And so she meant well. And I was able, it was no big deal. But see, the difference is my dad, now he would just turn my uniform pink just for a joke. Right? Our dads? This is funny. Let's turn it pink. Moms always know what to do in any situation. You moms, hats off to you guys. You guys always know what to do. There was no manual you read. It's just like this instinctive thing, right? Gals, us guys, we had to learn this stuff. It never came to us easy. I remember my son, Cam, my middle son, he was learning how to walk, and he was walking on the side of the wall, and Corbs and I are messing around, and Heather's in the bathroom. All of a sudden, he takes a header. He had a huge head, so it was kind of off-centered, and it was like, he grew into his head. I'm not being mean, but, it was a little bit off balance. And he hit the corner of the little register, the return vent, and he went smack. He started crying, and of course, I sprang into action. And I'm like, hey, what's going on over here? And he stands up. And I kid you not. Have you seen ever one of those Rainbird sprinklers? Has anybody had one of those Rainbirds where they go? That's exactly what was happening to his head. He comes up and he's like, his pulse is going. And he's crying. There's blood squirting everywhere. And of course, what did I do? I went. And Heather's going, grab something. She knew what to do. I had no idea. I completely locked up. She's yelling at me. She goes, grab something quick. Hurry, grab something. I'm like. And then I look at Corbs and we're like, oh, we had no clue what to do. And of course she knew how to handle it. She got a rag and she was, got him calmed down, and we went there and got his head glued. And it's like, if it wasn't for her, I don't know what I would do, And she's always worried about the boys, and my mom always worried about stuff. You moms always worry, don't you? And that's just part of being a mom. I think you guys worry, and she's my like little filter, and Heather's always like, is that safe, but sometimes you moms, let's admit, can be inconsistent with you being so worried and concerned. Like my mom, she'd be worried, if I had clean underwear on or anything like that, and she'd be worried about that. But yet she would let me and my friend Roger go play lawn darts in the back. Remember lawn darts? Most dangerous game in the world. Hey, you stand down there. I'm going to throw this big long dart, and hopefully we hit the circle over here. And it's a sunny day, so hopefully you don't lose one in the sun. She let us play lawn darts. She bought some at a garage sale one time for me. That was great. But moms, you're not afraid to get dirty, are you? Yeah, all you moms are going, yeah, no, we're not afraid of that. We're not afraid of boogers and puke and poo and anything else related to your kid, whatever. All right, now moms are amazing, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. That's who I am. Just throw it out here. When I get sick, I still miss my mom. Any dudes out there like that? Any people like that? Okay, maybe I'm the only one. This is an awkward moment for all of us. Very awkward. No, I seriously miss my mom, like especially when I throw up. I know this is gross, but she used to hold my head a certain way. I'm serious. And I'm like, Heather, can you just hold my... I'm not going to even go near you. And every time I throw up, I still miss my mom. I'm like, Mom, how many times were you with me holding my head. I mean, that's amazing. You're willing to get dirty and get your hands dirty. And wow, we're losing. Wow. Well, I don't know what's going on tonight. Hold on, let's turn on the stage light. We have a backup here. There we go. We'll go fluorescent tonight. So, anyways, my wife and Shannon, I'm going to embarrass Shannon here, Shannon Erbely, they were talking on the phone, and another thing of why moms aren't afraid to get dirty, and all of a sudden Heather got off the phone really quick. They usually talk for a couple hours at least, and I was like, we're into like 5 minutes, and she says, I got to get the phone right now, and she hangs up. I go, what was that about? What's emergency? She goes, well, her daughter had some of her poo in her hand, and she just cleaned the house, so... See, that stuff happens. I usually just get Heather involved in it, right? But we all know that moms care. They care. They have incredible empathy for even the littlest boo-boo. It's like, and see, dads, we don't do that. We care differently. We tell our kids to suck it up. And then we ask dumb questions, Dad. Like, you get hurt. Why'd you do that? Is that true or what? Yeah. Mom's like, are you okay? Why'd you do that for? Man. And here's the thing. Let's be honest, dads. We're going to come to Father's Day, but I'm going to rip on the dads a little bit because let's just be honest about this. We love to parent from the recliner. Don't we? Yes, let's admit it. We love to, this is Heather. I'm just getting in the chair, It's like I'm getting in the chair. I'm sitting down there, and Heather. This is just classic. And I know you guys do this too. But Heather's like, John, can you just help me get the kids to bed? Have you ever heard that one? Can you just help me get the kids to bed? I'm like, yeah. Kids, go to bed. Get to bed right now. Brush your teeth. And I sit there, and she's like, that's not what I meant, right? Get off the recliner is what she meant. And tonight, I say that is because there's a lot of, in the world that we live in, there is a lot of what I call armchair quarterbacks. Have you ever heard that phrase? Armchair quarterbacks, they're the ones that are the biggest fans, and they're sitting in the recliner, and they can yell at their team, and they know more about the plays than the coach on the TV screen, and they're sitting there, and they know all about the game, and they know what should happen next, and yet they're still sitting in the recliner, right? And we got those people all over the place. It's like, we complain about, we'll watch Fox News, and we'll complain about the government while we're eating Cheetos, sitting in a chair. And we talk about our schools being pathetic, and then we complain about higher taxes, and we talk about kids are so terrible today, but yet we won't volunteer for kids ministry. Ooh, ouch. That was a little plug for Heather. That was shameless. And we complain about our neighbor's yard and their dandelions growing up, but do we do anything about it? And so what we're going to look at today is some armchair Christians. Armchair Christians. There's a lot of us armchair Christians out there. And in fact, God is saying, hey church, listen up. Can you just help me out? We're all in our comfortable little pews, and God's saying, can you just help me out? Can you just help me out? I got some people that are broken and hurting, and I need you guys to help out here. Can you just help? And what we do is we're sitting in front of the pew going, hey, read the Bible. Do what it says. And as we're sitting in our armchairs. And it's easier to talk about problems than it's harder to do something, right? It's always harder to do something about it. We live in a broken world that specializes in producing broken people. This is the beginning of this new series. Are you guys ready for a new series, by the way? I am. Okay. Whew. Enough with Galatians. We live in a broken world that specializes in broken people. Man, the sad case of Junior Seau, the football player. He was just an amazing football player in the NFL who took his life. You guys heard that in the news. And I was watching some that was unfolding. And I don't know if you saw on the news, but his mom, after he committed suicide, and she was on the news conference, and she was just crying out. She's like, not me, take me, not my son, leave my son, take me, leave my son. And as the NFL is trying to sort through the brokenness, and on Sports Illustrated said, why? The question, why? Because we live in a broken world that specializes in producing broken people. That's what it does. There's broken dreams and lives and relationship and society and esteem and all these things. And here's the point that drives me crazy when it comes to election time. You know what? Because we're looking for a presidential Messiah. Do you know that? And I'm not getting political, Democrat, Republican here. I'm saying we are looking for a presidential Messiah, somebody to help us, somebody to take care of all our problems, somebody to take care of the broken world that we live in, because the hot topics that they talk about in the politics are about brokenness. It's about economy, it's about poverty, it's about not having enough and welfare and health care and all these issues, and we're looking for presidential Messiah. And I'm telling you what, the world is producing broken people. That's what it does. But the problem is that you can't solve the brokenness by a worldly solution. And there was a little nursery rhyme that my mom used to say to me. And some of you guys know this was one of my favorites. And from little on, we know that there's brokenness in the world. Remember the Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, right? You guys know, anybody know this? Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the what? And all the couldn't what? Yeah, I was so bummed about that. I'm like, is there a happy ending here, Mom? I can't go to bed like this. Give me something. What do you mean they can't put them back together again? Did they try? Yeah, they tried. Like, give me another one, Mom. That's all you got? Humpty Dumpty? And so we learn that there's brokenness. And I'm going to tell you something. Nehemiah, this is a great book to start on Mother's Day, because as moms aren't afraid to do something and get dirty and deal with the problems, and they care and they ask the right questions. And as we look at moms and honor them today, we're also looking at Nehemiah, who got out of the armchair, okay? He cared about brokenness and he did something about it. And I think it's so pointing to us today. And so there are going to be 4 things we're going to be learning, okay? I don't know why we're doing 4, but we're going to do 4 things we're going to be dealing with in this book. So if you want to know where we're going, and if you want to skip the next 14 weeks, just learn these things and you'll get an A on the test at the end. I don't think this will be a test. Number 1, this is where we're going. So make sure you're with me. Number 1, we're going to be dealing with caring for the broken world, getting off the chair, okay? We're going to be talking about caring for the broken world. We live in a world that doesn't care. And then number 2, we're going to be dealing with our brokenness in the world. The only cure is a spiritual one, as we're going to look at. And then this is a cool part of this book, is finding God's plan for you in the broken world. That we all have a plan and purpose, okay? I just want to start preaching all these, but we can't. I gotta space it out here for a few weeks. So finding God's plan for you in a broken world. Everybody is needed. Everybody's needed in this journey that we're on. Okay, and number 4, pressing on in a broken world, facing discouragement. All right? So is that cool if we go to those places? Yep. Anybody disagree? We can switch books right now. Okay, might be a little awkward because I'm not ready. So, okay, here we go. Let's put our seatbelts on. Let's look at Nehemiah chapter 1, verses 1. Nehemiah 1:1. All right. And please read ahead during the week, okay, because we're going to be dealing with some bigger chunks of this book, and I'm not going to be able to maybe get to all of it, so please read it, kind of challenge yourself this week. But here's what we're going to do with a couple verses here tonight. Here's the words of Nehemiah, son of Hilkiah. In the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men. And I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. Now, it doesn't necessarily appear that there's a lot going on here, but there is, all right? So have you ever read the Old Testament especially? We read the Old Testament. The reason why I went to the Old Testament is our next series is because Galatians kind of beats up on the Old Testament. The Old Testament law pretty good. And almost to the point where it's like people start thinking, is there anything good in the Old Testament? You know, because he makes his point pretty pointed. But I'm going to tell you something. There's some good stuff in the Old Testament. It doesn't mean to throw it out, okay? And we're going to be dealing with some cool things here. But number 1, have you ever read like the Old Testament? I'm knocking over the fire here. The Old Testament, and they talk about like the month of Kislev in the 20th year and all these little things that they list. And have you ever said to yourself, who cares? I mean, let's be honest. Like, I read that verse and like, oh, that was so uplifting at church tonight. It was awesome. We learned that in the month of Kislev in the 20th year while I was in the citadel of Susa. That's one I want you guys to memorize. Can you memorize that verse this week? So, when you went to church, your pastor pumped you up. Yes, yeah, he gave me a great verse. Yes, the month of Kislev in the 20th year while I was in the citadel of Susa. Spoke to me right here. It's powerful stuff. Now, seriously, I don't want you to lose focus of what's going on here, okay? Because this stuff is actually incredibly important. You know why it's incredibly important? Especially to the critics of the Bible. The Bible is the most historically accurate book that survived history. It is the most accurate historical book. If you just take away anything else and look at it from a history standpoint, there's nothing like it. Nothing comes close to it. From archaeology to historical events. And so part of the history of that is to say, hey, listen up, guys. In the months of Kislev, in the 20th year while I was in the citadel of Susa, I'm telling you what, if you go back in history and the other ancient writers like Josephus and all these other guys, they're going to nail this stuff. It's right on. I want to tell you that the Bible is the most accurate historical book that you'll ever read. And in fact, it's funny that even non-believers that even archaeologists, they use the Bible as a guide to doing archaeology. And they don't even believe it. But as they use it from a historical standpoint, let me tell you something, it is accurate. And in fact, the book of Daniel is one of the most disputed books in the Bible. You know why? Because Daniel predicted in his prophecies the rise and the fall of every major superpower to date. And he also predicted the end times. And so scholars have argued the date of this book because they're like, there's no way he nailed every single one of those, and he did. And he's still nailing them today. And so when we read this stuff, it's not going to change your life, but it also gives us a foundation that we can trust this book that we're studying. This stuff is historically accurate. They're not making stuff up here, okay? I could just go off on archaeology, and someday I'll teach a biblical archaeology class, and it just blow your mind. I mean, stuff that's not in your textbooks that needs to be in, all right? But we won't have time for that. Son of Hilkiah, okay, I love this. In the Old Testament, the fathers get the credit. In the world we live in today, I love it. The moms get the credit, right? Whenever somebody goes on TV, they're always like, hey, Mom. They never say hi to Dad. What's the deal there? All right, but we had our moment, dads, in the Old Testament. Today is for the moms, okay? So now here's some dates we're going to start dialing in, and I want you to remember a few dates, okay? If you remember any dates in the Bible, remember these dates, okay? In the Old Testament, all right, there's a specific date that you need to remember because a lot of the Old Testament hinges on this date. Okay, let's look at this. Dates, 586 BC. Say 586 BC. And that was the Babylonian captivity. That's important, okay? This happens after the God's chosen people, He blessed Abraham. We looked at that, and God's chosen people. Remember they went into captivity in Egypt, all right? He delivered them through Moses. Do you guys all remember those stories? And Moses and the Exodus and all that kind of stuff. But what happened is they stopped following God, and He brought them into exile. And so a big chunk of the books in the Old Testament have to deal with the exile into Babylonian captivity. You ever remember Daniel in the lion's den? Anybody heard those stories? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or as VeggieTales, Rack, Shack, and Benny. Have you seen any of those? Some of you parents are like, yes. I've never actually watched it. I've heard it a bunch of times in the van. All right, so this is right before the Babylonian captivity. Daniel and his friends were taken in 606 BC approximately, before total Babylonian captivity. In 586, Jerusalem is taken, and all the people, God's chosen people, are taken into Babylon, okay? And are you ahead of me? Boy, I'm not even old, out of the Old Testament yet. You're heading to 70 AD already. All right, we'll go there. Okay, so Babylonian captivity, that's incredibly important to remember that date, okay? Now, the other one is 70 AD. Say 70 AD. 70 years, okay, approximately, after the cross and the whole Jesus deal. That's after a lot of the New Testament was written. 70 AD, it's significant is because Jerusalem was taken over by Rome and completely destroyed. And the things that are going to be fulfilled in the end times are all stemming from that 70 AD date, okay? So those are some significant dates to keep in mind and to learn if you can. So what's the first one? 586 BC. What's the second one? Keep eyes here. All right. And then there's another one that I'm just going to need some help on. This one I'm just going to throw out there just so you guys can help me. This is for me, not for you guys. And then Heather's birthday, June 7th. Can you guys help me remember that? Okay. All right. I just need a little help there. All right. So let's go back to the Babylonian captivity. I'm going to go to a timeline here. And let's look at the timeline. 586 BC is when they're taken into captivity, okay? And we're going to look at some specific points here and bring us up to where we're at in Nehemiah, all right? So please don't get bored. This is good stuff. Babylonian captivity. Remember King Nebuchadnezzar? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel. If you remember some of the stories in Sunday school, that's what happened in 586 BC, Babylonian captivity, okay? Then what happened is they were in captivity for all that time, and then in 538 BC, Cyrus the Great, who was a Persian leader, came and the Persians took over Babylon. They captured them, okay? So now the Persians take over, okay? And under the Persians, under Cyrus the Great, he starts releasing God's chosen people to have freedom, and he gives them freedom. And he gives them freedom to go back to Jerusalem and to live again where their homeland was. And so that one is in 537 BC. The first group returns under a guy named Zerubbabel. Say that 20 times fast. Zerubbabel. I can't even do two. So Zerubbabel in the line of David. He was actually in the lineage of King David. And he comes and takes the first group back to Jerusalem in 537 BC. And then they decide that they need the temple. So they're going to rebuild the temple. So in 520 to 515 BC, the second temple is built under Zerubbabel and Joshua the high priest. Okay? And so they go back and they start building it up. And then there's another group in the book of Ezra, the book before this Nehemiah book. They take a second group into 458 BC. And we'd say all that to get to the third group, which is what we're going to be talking about in this series. And that's Nehemiah. In 444 to 445 BC is when Nehemiah takes a third group from the exile, from the Babylonian captivity. He takes a third group to Jerusalem. And he's going to have a specific purpose. So my first question is, why would the Persians allow them to go back? Are you guys with me? Did you follow all that? Well, the Persians allowed them to go back because I believe that they also helped, because they were in captivity and slavery. I believe that they helped beat and defeat the Babylonian kings. And so the Persians said, hey, we'll let you have your freedom if you help us. And so I believe that they helped in that. So why is this history important? I say a couple things. It's important to understand the nation of Israel. It's very important to understand the promise that God made to Abraham. He said, I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to bless you. And that promise, I'm telling you what, is going to be from the beginning to the very end. He's going to continue that. Because let me tell you something about the book that we study. The books in the Bible, they have to do with Israel. They always have had to do with Israel, and they always will have to do with Israel. And so us Gentiles, unless you're of Jewish descent, we're Gentiles that were engrafted into this olive branch, as the New Testament calls it, through Jesus, who's opened salvation to all Jew and Gentile. We are part of the promise of Israel. And friends, it's important to understand what happened to the Israelites back here, because it also helps us to understand where we stand today. So they're having fun out there. I love that. That's good news. So who's Nehemiah? Let's look at Nehemiah for a second. He's going to be the cupbearer to the king, as we're going to look at. And anybody know what a cupbearer does? What does a cupbearer do? One at a time, please. That's rude.
Taste the wine.
Taste the wine for the king, and why?
Make sure there isn't poison.
So what a great job. Here, taste this wine, because if you're going to kill the king, most often you can do it through food and poison. And so Nehemiah would taste the wine for the king. All right? Artaxerxes is the king at the time, and he's going to taste the wine for the king. All right? Do we have to close some of those windows? I see some of you guys with ADHD going, pretty bird over here. My second illustration is Ritalin. If you guys want to hand some of that out over here in this section, you guys are with me. I can tell they're over here going, what's going on? I love that. It's good to hear kids' voices, isn't it? It's awesome. So he's doing a great job. Now, let me tell you something. Is the cupbearer a trusted person to the king? Absolutely. He's with them all the time. If the king's trusting him to taste there's poison, between the cupbearer and the king, he could poison the king. So you got to have some trust here. And so here is an Israelite from God's chosen people, and he's the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes. That's a pretty awesome thing. All right? And most likely you got to understand that this happened about almost 100 years after they were freed up from Babylonian captivity. So most likely Nehemiah was not born under slavery. Okay? He was born under the freedom of the Persians that they gave him. And that's where he was elevated to high. And so he's set. Okay? He doesn't have to worry about anything. And what's so important about this scripture, if you notice, what does he do? His brother comes to him and he says one question. And this one question is going to start this whole book. And that's why these two verses are significant. And this is why we're talking about them tonight. He says one question. He questions them about the people. His brother comes and he asks about the people, the exiles, the two other trips before. And he asks about the city of Jerusalem. One question is going to completely change Nehemiah's perspective. One question is going to motivate him to change careers. One question is going to make him see things that he's never saw before, as he's going to answer this next week. One question will change him forever. Let me tell you something. Right now, where Nehemiah sits, the book is just going to hinge right open. And they just deal with so much in these two verses. And as he's going to ask this question, something's going to transform in his heart, right between these verses, between 3 and 4. Verses 2 and 3. His heart's going to be switched right here. He had no desire to go to Jerusalem. He had lots of opportunities. There were 2 trips before back to the homeland, back to Jerusalem. He had no desire prior to that to go back. He was set for life. He had the 401k going on. He was the cupbearer to the king, the highest ranking official of the time in the most powerful nation in its time. They took out the Babylonians. And he was trusted by the Most High of that time. So why does he ask? And why is he going to change his heart here? It's interesting. People, we usually care when it affects us, right? He's living the good life. What they're doing in Jerusalem really doesn't matter to him, does it? We only care about our neighbors, when the dandelions are growing, right? When we can see the little yellow flowers of goodness and joy over there. There's lots of opinions, but few doers. And I'm trying to grasp, and what I want to challenge us tonight is to grasp at what changed in Nehemiah's heart between these verses. He had it all, and he's about to give it up for an adventure of a lifetime. See, God put Nehemiah in Susa in that exact time and the place. And so why did God wait to change his heart at that moment? There were 2 other trips before that, but why did God wait till that time? Because I believe that God puts his workers in the right places at the right times. Anybody agree with that? I believe that God puts his people in the right place at the right time. I'm going to tell you something. Let's play some percentages right now. There is a 0% chance that Heather and I would be living in Streator, North Dakota if it wasn't for God. I'm going to say that the percentage is 0. When my dad moved here after Mom passed away, I'm calling my sisters going, he needs medication. He needs to see somebody. He's not doing well. He just got the phone with me and said he's moving back to Streator, North Dakota. We were like talking behind his back. We were like, is he okay? What's going on? Is he feeling all right? I know they have kuchen and everything like that, but we'll ship him some. German sausage from Wishick, we can have that imported. It's called dry ice. We'll get it to him. Whatever it's going to take. Reister's prime rib, we'll send that down. Whatever. Why is he moving to Streator, North Dakota? And I'm telling you what, how God orchestrated things, it is not it wasn't even on my radar screen. And the amazing thing is that God can even use our failures to put us where He wants us and needs us. Isn't that amazing? He can even put our most hideous failures in our lives to put us exactly. I mean, that must frustrate Satan so much, right? When he gets you down on the ground and he's made Christians completely fail and lose it. And then he's like, I got him. And then God just like, man, checkmate, as, I didn't see that move. I didn't see Streator move there. God has you where He wants you. In this time, in this place, and for this purpose. But listen up. God cannot use people who don't care. Are you with me? God has a hard time using people who don't care for the broken world that we live in. See, the worst sin that we can do as people, the worst sin that we can do is not hating people. It's not hating each other. It's being indifferent. It's not caring. Nehemiah, it was like any other day. I mean, it was just like any other day, all right? He's in the winter palace of the king in Kislev, and he's in the citadel of Susa, which means from history we know that was the king's winter palace. From mid-November to mid-December is when he's writing this, and he's in the citadel of Susa writing this when he's up there as the king, and it's like any other day. He's the cupbearer. He has to get up before the king. He has to make sure he's at every meal for the king, and this is the winter palace of the king, so he's right there. And he's done the same thing over and over again. It's like many of you guys, every year we plant. This time of the year we plant, and then we're going to, hopefully it grows. And I mean, we go through life, and every day when you get up and go to work, you've done the same things over and over for sometimes many, many years, right? And as we all get up and go through that routine, it was no different for Nehemiah. Nehemiah got up that morning, and he was the cupbearer to the king. But this particular day, God decided to do something a little different, and his brother shows up. And for this particular day, Nehemiah decides to ask one question. He asks one question, and he says, how are the people? How are they? And how's Jerusalem? And the answer to this question is going to break his heart. See, one small question is going to change Nehemiah's life forever. And the thing that's often interesting is that life changes often swing on small hinges. Life changes often swing on small hinges. You saw Moses, like any other day. Moses was tending sheep. Just like every other day. He got up, he had his little lunch sack, with the little thermos from his wife, and I'm just kicking these sheep around. Man, sheep, I wish I was into beef like North Dakotans are, and sheep. And he's like any other day, and all of a sudden what happened? The bush lit up, and God spoke to him, and it changed his life and his course forever. Oh, David, a little shepherd boy, the smallest of the family, the runt of the litter, and he's up there and he's tending the flocks in the hills. And I've been in those hills, and you can just picture him just hanging up there under these trees, just like any other peaceful day overlooking the valley. Except this one day is a group of people came, and all of a sudden he didn't really know what was going on, and they anointed him king that day. Changed his life forever. Oh, and then there was Peter, Andrew, James, and John. Remember that? These guys were fishermen. I mean, they were, the deadliest catch. They're out there, all right, in the Sea of Galilee. And they had a horrible night fishing, like most of the days, It's like you just tell these guys, we're just like, they were horrible fishermen, but, that's what my dad did, so it's our boat and family boat. They're not really into it. And they had a horrible night fishing, and they're fixing the nets. And it was just like every other day, every other time they went out, they're trying to make a living for their family, day in and day out. Except this particular day, A guy named Jesus of Nazareth comes up to him and says, put your nets. I want to make you fishers of men. It changed their life forever, and it changed planet Earth forever. Those 12 disciples, we're here today because those 12 disciples didn't keep their mouth shut. So what about you? It's no accident. God doesn't make junk. Do you believe that? I mean, it must grieve God when men and women today are, and even these teenage girls, just breaks my heart. We deal with so much stuff with the strength team in schools, with kids that are wanting to take their life and they have nothing, and they see themselves in the mirror as nothing. And all we do is come in there and say, listen, God doesn't make junk. He made you. And can you imagine when you look in the mirror and you tear yourself down? God's like, I made you that way. It's not junk. So what about you? Could be a farmer planting the field this week, like every other day you've done at this time of the year. And it might be that God's going to speak to you in a way that'll change your life forever. Or maybe you'll be chasing cows, and God's asking you to step up like you've never stepped up before. Maybe it's you're fixing fence that the disciples were fixing, and Jesus is going to say, hey, I want you to help be fixers of men. Can you do that for me? Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom, and God's asking you to raise the next Samuel. See, we get so caught up with the mundane, the routine of our lives, that we don't realize that God is calling us to extraordinary things. He's got you fixing fence because that's exactly where He wants you. And it's all part of His plan. But here's the deal. We have to care. And so why I'm just dealing with 2 verses tonight is that you have to care. And we know our moms care. We know moms care. Why? Because they ask questions. Dad doesn't ask questions. Other than like after you get hurt. What'd you do that for? Moms ask questions. Some of you teens out there, they see you go, yes, so many questions. Why? Where have you been? Are you hungry? My mom used to say, what in tarnation are you doing? Mom, I don't know what tarnation means. Did I step in it? But my favorite, my mom always said, no matter what. I miss her saying this. John, are you okay? Are you okay? My mom always asked if I was okay. She'd always call me up and say, are you doing okay? How are things? And she knew my voice. I'd be like, oh, no, everything's fine. You liar. No, are you okay? Because moms know when their kids aren't okay. And they care, and we know that. But the world says, if you guys take out your quarter, I dropped mine here. Here we go. But see, we live in a world that says, here's a quarter, go call somebody who cares, because I don't, right? That's what the world says. The world tells us all that, you know what, here's a quarter, go call somebody who cares, because I really want to hear it. If it's not affecting me, I don't want to hear your problems. I don't want to hear about your brokenness. So here's a quarter, go call somebody who cares. And so I give you the quarter to do 2 things. This is your challenge this week as we get into this book. Because the first part we have to deal with is getting out of the chair. We have to care. So I'm praying you take this quarter and you have 2 choices. You can do like the world does, and you can listen to somebody or come in contact, or if the Lord gives you somebody in your mind, or you look at the dandelions in their yard or something, and you can flip them a quarter and you can say, go call somebody who cares, just like the world says. Or you can use the quarter and call somebody if you care. Are you with me? Call somebody if you care. Nehemiah, he took the time to ask. He took the time to ask. See, his life is not going to change if he didn't ask. It wouldn't change. Right here. That's why this is so pivotal. If he didn't ask, he would still be not still because he'd been dead, but he'd been the cupbearer of the king till he died. And take the 401k and run with it. I mean, you've got the best job, Nehemiah. What are you going to do? Instead, he asked the question. One question changed everything. And this week, I want you to ask one question. I'm going to ask the Lord to speak to all of us, somebody that you know you need to check up on. Each one of us knows somebody that we need to use the quarter to call because we care. That's the challenge. Can you guys take that challenge on me? He took the time to ask. See, listen up. If we're going to be talking about the broken world, and we're going to be looking at how to deal with our brokenness in the broken world, we have to ask the question first. We have to ask the world about their brokenness first. That's the first step. And that's why I'm not moving on past verse 2 right now. And some of you guys are doing the math and going, man, we're going to be here a long time if he just does 2 verses a Sunday. Because here's something that I was challenging my mom. Remember that little Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall? Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty back together again. One of the questions I asked my mom is, I'm like, Mom, I didn't get it. I really struggled with the story that it didn't end well. And I said, Mom, I didn't like that part of the nursery rhyme. And I said, Mom. And she's like, well, they tried to put him back. All the king's horses and all the king's men. And I often thought, this is how my mind would always work. And I asked her, I said, well, Mom, why didn't they take him to the king to fix? Because surely the king could fix. We live in a world of brokenness that produces broken people. It's what it's designed to do. And all the world's horses and all the world's men cannot put us and our brokenness back together again. And we live in a world that's trying to put all these pieces back together again. But I'm telling you what, there's only one person that we need to take these pieces to, and that's the King, God Almighty. Are you with me? And he's asking us to help him. He's asking us to care. He's asking us to say, listen, I know it's a big job. There are lots of pieces, and all the world's horses and all the world's men couldn't put these people's lives back, and it's getting worse. And there's so much brokenness in the world. But number one, I need you to care, and I need you to get off the chair. And so that's where we're going. Are you ready? Hang on to your quarter. Let's pray.